Alright, well, just giving the cylinders a light hone. I like to build the engine while I'm doing the body work. That way you get a break from doing one and you can sort of concentrate on the other. Sort of breaks the monotony. Alright, so we've got to clean the block up. And the first thing we need to do is get all of the honing material out of the bore, because all that's going to do is prematurely wear the rings, and you've got to scrub it with hot soapy water to make sure you get absolutely everything out. And the test is a clean white rag. You're supposed to be able to run it on the inside. If there's any grey on it, it's no good, because all that's going to do is prematurely wear your motor. We've cleaned the block, dried it out, lubricated it all, and so you want to protect it from getting dirty. So the best way to do that is using a garbage bag. Just sort of drape it over, it stops any muck. We're in a pretty dusty garage here, and dust is the enemy with these things. What do you reckon, Suze? Pretty impressive?
Boring.
Let's take these old bearings out. You can always tell which way they go because they're numbered 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 with an arrow on each one facing forward. In our kit we have two different types of rear main oil seal. We've got the old rope type one, and we've also got the one that's half a rigid seal. Now I much prefer these because when you put them in, put the crankshaft in and torque everything down, you can still rotate nice and easily. These are the main bearings. Very important to get these. These ones are all shelled. Very important to get these the right way. I'm just going to double check sizes. And put them in. Most important, some of them have a groove both sides and some have a groove on one side and a solid bearing on the other side. It's most important to get the groove part near these galleries, because if you get them wrong, you've just fried your whole engine before you've even started. Just make sure they sit evenly. And it's designed for thrust to be taken at the centre bearing. Okay. Nice and even. Alright. Right, so I've got the crank sitting in. Sitting on new half bearing shells. I haven't lubricated the crankshaft because I want to clearance it. I'm going to use plastic gauge for this. This stuff's just a very fine plastic strand, if you like, and you break off pieces and you put it across the bearings. Torque everything down. You don't rotate it, whatever you do. You torque everything down, take it off, and there's a scale on the side that tells you what your clearance is. Now, this crank's in great condition. The bearings that came out were 10 thou under, and so I'm putting new 10 thou under bearings, but I just want to check it all the same. The best way to do it is to mic it. Here's a micrometer. That's the most accurate, but this is certainly okay to do. I've decided to use these ARP studs. These are basically, they're much better kit. You just basically screw them in hand tight. Have to follow the instructions though, and there's some special lubricant that goes with them. So I'm going to use these over and above the bolts because they're more accurate, they're better, and they're not expensive. I think these are around $79 or so a box. I'm just going to torque these down. I'm starting by taking up the slack. And you always torque them down sort of from the centre out, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, like that. This is a Warrior Brown torque wrench, a good quality one. I'm going to torque everything down. Camera tripod's in. Important with the torque wrench, don't use an extension, because then the reading you're getting at the top is going to be it's going to be different from having the socket right at the torque wrench itself. So these are 100 foot-pound. I've gone to 35, I'll go 70, then I'll go 100. Between each one, just make sure the crank's nice and free. If it starts binding, there's something very wrong. Right, so we've got an ARP stud kit in. Everything's torqued down, bearings are clearance well. It has to still turn free. I've got this tool that slips over the crank. These are great because they've got a couple of different slots for different size keyways, and it just goes over. And that way you can just leave a breaker bar or something in there and it won't fall off. It should turn nice and freely like that. That's perfect. That's exactly how it should be. If it's getting tight anywhere in the rotation, something's wrong. Now I'm a little bit worried. I thought this was a 75 block. It's actually 74D. 4 is 1974. D for the 70s and 4 for the 4th year. Now, sometime in 1974, Ford raised the deck height. They made it a bit longer down here, to lower compression, because then they started getting into the heavy smog and all that sort of stuff, smog control and all that sort of thing. So the pistons that came out of here were a long way from the deck, sort of 60-80 thousandths or something, and then a big 26cc dish. Now I'm going to put these in. These have a higher compression height, rings are in the same spot obviously, and a 12cc valve relief. I'm a little bit worried because this could actually be, this was the year that it was changed apparently. I'm using cast rings on this because the engine hasn't been rebored. I'm using the old bores and cast bed in better with an old bore. If you're using a fresh bore and you want to do track work or whatever, you might use chrome or molly rings. I'm using cast on this, so we're going to stick the pistons in now. Now the importance of this next bit can't be stressed enough. You have to check your ring end gap, because if these are too big and there's not enough clearance in there, they can swell up against the bore and you've ruined your engine. So to do that, you would put one inside. Now I do this to both oil scrapers and I do it to both compression rings. Now you just want to tap it down with the piston, about an inch or so down. Make sure it's nice and square, like that, and then you use a feeler gauge. And that's about 15 thousandths. So the specifications between 10 and 20, that's absolutely fine. Be careful when you take it out, nice and carefully. Another thing you want to make sure of when you're fitting rings is that these ends here on the expander ring aren't overlapped. They're right up butted against each other, because if they're overlapped they'll stick out too far and again you'll destroy your motor. When you're fitting pistons to these, you've got to keep in mind the thrust faces of the engine, which are these two outside faces here. What that means is the piston's natural inclination to kick over under powered stroke and also on the compression stroke. So you want to keep your end gaps away from that, so I'm going to have them 180 degrees apart from each other, sort of like this. And that way we're not on these two apexes and we get a better seal. Another thing, when we fit these, we're going to use a spring compressor, clock the rings appropriately as I said, and also put pieces of hose on here, a couple of small pieces of hose, 3/8 hose, just so that when we do push it through, it's not going to mark up the crank. So the same as we've done on the main bearings, I've used plastic gauge here, we're sitting on 1.5 thousandths, and that's well within specification. And what's really important to do after you've done that is to make sure the thing rotates smoothly. And if it doesn't rotate smoothly, there's a problem. Right, so I've got the rotating assembly in, all finished, all clearanced and everything. One thing to make sure of is on each of these journals, where the big ends fit, there's a radius on the edge, and these have to be put in the right way, because that radius, there's a chamfer cut in the side of each of these rod ends. Now, if they're put in the wrong way, chances are the motor will lock up and won't turn. But on an older motor like this, it is possible it'll still rotate, but you'll only have a couple of thousandths clearance in there, and that's sure, a sure destruction of the motor. So it's very important to check in here against the manual to make sure you've got the right clearance, because there's an awful lot of friction and heat in these areas when the motor's running. So we need to make sure of all that. So another thing that needs to be done, which is quite often overlooked, is also the thrust, which is taken at the centre bearing. You pry it back and you can check it with a feeler gauge to make sure that's all good. So we're going to stick a camshaft in now. So here we have our Lunati, or if you're English, Lunati camshaft. Comes as a kit. We need this paraphernalia here to dial the cam in, so we know exactly what we're doing. All the specifications are written there, so we know what we're getting and we know exactly how it's supposed to be set up. The cams is a kit. It comes with a set of lifters, which are flat tappets, a sticker for your back window, which I'm not going to use, and also a bit of assembly lube. Now another thing you can use is this cam and lifter installation stuff. This is competition cams. It's a red liquid that's goopy. It sort of sits on the surfaces and doesn't run off, and we desperately need to use a lubricant when we put the camshaft in. We have to have this all scrupulously clean. It also comes with the dowels for the timing set as well. Good idea to take dowels off, because some cams don't come with them. Now one thing I want to do, I bought this Rollmaster timing set. It's 9 keyways, so I can dial the cam in. I just want to check though, because the camshaft came with 2 different length pins, and I want to see the depth of each of these so I can make sure I use the right pin. That's about 20 mil. And that just slides in it, so that's quite an easy fit. I've also got this handle. This makes camshaft installation very easy. We can just screw the handle in, and then we can support the weight of the camshaft as we put it in the motor, but we have to lubricate it first before we install it. Instructions say to put the molly type grease on the lobes and the lifter faces. There we go, nice and smooth. Now these thrust plates, Ford in their wisdom have written back bottom there, and so we know that this goes toward the rear and faces down the bottom. Now this is critical because there's several different types of timing chain sets available for these cars. This is an early 351. In other words, it's not fuel injected, so we need the right kit before we can proceed. I'm just going to put a bit of assembly lube on there. This is really goopy, this stuff. Once again, we're staying with good quality ARP kit. I'm just going to take this as a camshaft bolt and washer, and I've just put the sprockets on. I haven't timed anything or done anything like that yet, just so that, just to see the general fit of it all. But most importantly, to make sure that these two sprockets line up. There's a thrust washer that comes with this. The original Ford timing sets used a special thrust washer, looked like a C behind here. I know they did on the FEs, I'm not sure about the Windsors. And the aftermarket ones, the thrust washer is normally built into them, so when you put them on, it can kick this sprocket out. And that's what happened with the Galaxy's motor. Ended up stretching the chain. I'm lucky it didn't break. But just to get a straight edge across there, just to make sure it's perfectly lined up, which it is, I can see by eye that's absolutely perfect. Now I can start putting the chain on and get a degree wheel happening. Now I've got to find true top dead centre on this engine before we can dial in the cam. Basically, top dead centre is when the piston's at the top of its stroke. But as it goes round and reaches the top, it can still be a few degrees either side of top dead centre. We're going to find the dead centre before we can do anything accurately. Right, so I've fashioned a cylinder stop there. The piston's hard up against that bolt, and I've set this at 0. So if I turn the engine back the other way till it stops, and I'll take a reading, and that's sitting on 41 degrees. So I now know if I divide that by 2, I've got 20.5 degrees. So if I take this off and continue round to just over 20 degrees, between 20 and 21 degrees, I know that's true top dead centre. Right on top dead centre, that's as top as we'll get. So I'm just going to move this down to 0. We're right on top dead centre there. And we need this for 3 reasons. We need to dial the cam in, but not just that, I want to check how much room is left between the top of the piston, including all this relief and everything, so I can see it, fill it up with a very thin oil, find out exactly what room's there, do the same to the combustion chamber in the head, calculate the head gasket thickness, and I can work out the compression ratio. So I need to dial the cam in, work out compression, and also temporarily mock up the timing case cover and a harmonic balancer so I can see exactly where top dead centre is supposed to be on the pointer, because it could be a couple of degrees out. Now this is really homemade and a bit dodgy, so don't laugh at me. I'm just going to get a little bit of grease around the cylinder, number 1. I'm only interested in number 1 for now. I'll seal against the plastic lid I'm going to put there. And look, it probably won't be absolutely accurate, but it'll give me a good idea of what compression I'm going to have. So I'm just using a homemade setup here. This is just a piece of acrylic. I'm going to press it on, and that way when I put fluid in here, the air can escape there. Now I have exactly 50 cc's of very fine oil here. Here we go. I'm going to fill it up and take a measurement on exactly how much I had to put in. Out. Okay, now we're sitting on 28. That's 30, so 28 cc's. So we started with 50 cc's in the syringe, we had 28 left, which means this whole area here is 22 cc's. Once I've cc'd the cylinder heads, taking into account the head gasket thickness, then I can work out my compression ratio. This can all get fairly confusing. I've got the had to work out the lobe centre line. I've got 65 degrees one way, 149 the other. Added together, divided by 2, I'm coming up with 107. According to the box, the centre line on the intake's 108, so within a degree we're on target. I did want to run, it's got a tiny bit of advance on the cam. If that number's lower, generally the cam's advanced, and you need to retard it, but within a degree is alright. Now, having the valve timing advanced isn't such a bad thing because it allows for a bit of timing chain stretch, but I might leave it there. The intake and exhaust valves are opening at the right time as well, so I'm fairly happy with that, so I might leave it there. One thing I did forget to mention, when you use a dial indicator to check your lift, when you're dialing your cam in, you have to run your dial indicator on the edge of the lift and not the dampened part in the centre, or use a solid lifter. Got these lovely Lunati springs. They're a double valve spring and they're matched to the camshaft we've used in the car, but before we put these on, we need to do a bit of a clearance check. And so I've mocked up one cylinder head on. There's only 2 valves in it, the 2 number 1 valves, and we need to check clearance, piston to valve clearance. Now, in an ideal world, you need at least 100 thousandths. That's 2.5 millimetres, because you need to allow for the engine running at full tilt. At 5,500 RPM, there's going to be a lot of heat in there and a bit of rod stretch and expansion and all that sort of stuff, so we need to make sure that they're clearing properly. Now, to do it properly, we need to use solid lifters or an old lifter with the internals welded up, just tack welded on the side. And these aren't they, but we can still get an idea and check it along the way. Now, another thing we need to check, because we're using non-standard valves and retainers, we need to check the clearance in here on the rocker arm. Now, that isn't such a big deal with standard rockers, but with roller rockers or aftermarket ones, that's a check you need to do, because if they're contacting, if the clearance in here is too little, as the valve comes down, it can kick this top over without pushing the valve correctly, and you can drop a valve and it's really dangerous. This one looks fine. We'll just rotate the engine and you can see as it goes down that opens up, but when they rest there's still quite a small amount of room there, but we're out of danger. That's actually okay. Now, this is only a rudimentary check because I'm a little bit worried, because I'm using pistons with a higher compression height. They're about 40 thousandths higher or more, and a much bigger camshaft than stock. But having said that, the inlet's only 522, it's not over that, so it should all clear fine. To give you an idea with these springs, these are off the degree wheel kit, and you can actually push the valves down. That's about top dead centre there, and we're hitting there. That's hitting the piston, but at top dead centre, that's fine. The real danger is though, the piston does chase the exhaust valve up, and it's worth, when we start turning it, just to maintain a bit of a look at that. Now, there's plenty going on there, there's plenty of room there. You can also peer in here with the torch as well, just to make sure you can see exactly where the piston is, and the piston's almost at the top there. And we still have bags and bags of clearance, more than what the slack in the lifter is giving us. There's absolutely stacks of clearance there. So that's all good. And also we've got another 40 thousandths or so when we put the head gasket on, so there's stacks and stacks of room there. But you'd work on the premise that about 100 thousandths is the clearance you're aiming for. So here's our cylinder head back off the car. One thing I should have mentioned before is the valve guides. Now, the standard Ford valve guides are good for camshafts up to around 500 lift. We're running 522 and we clearance well, so they could well have been replaced sometime in the past, and there's no issue at all. The other thing that I found, which I'm not happy about, are these push-in studs or pressed-in studs. These are a 3/8 stud with a 5/16 nut, and I'm a little bit worried about the strength of the springs I'm putting in, overpowering them. Now, somebody has put, this one here is lower than the other ones. I'm not happy with that, and it's been drilled with a roll pin through it, so that's going to have to get pulled out. It looks like it's been done professionally because it's the same on the other side, So I don't think it's a home handyman, a machine shop's done it. So I'm going to get these ARP screw-in studs put in, just to make sure that the overhead gear is nice and strong and coping with the extra spring pressure. Now there are still a couple of parts I need to buy. I need to buy the little shim washers that go around here so the spring doesn't run directly against the cylinder head, and also a set of push rods. These all look well, except this one. This one's lost its hardening. It's been chafing on something, but it's probably got something to do with that dodgy looking stud there. So the motor's back in its bag. I'm going to leave it there for now, and next time I'll upload another video in a few weeks and we'll look at the heads painting it, putting the rest of it back together. See you later.